Good evening. I am back after a much needed weekend. I'm Ramit Sethi, CEO of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And tonight we are talking about coronavirus and money. How much do I need to save? All right, this is going to be fun because I know what you're thinking. Ramit, I've heard a lot of other people tell me how to save money. I know what you're going to tell me to do. You're going to tell me, first of all, cut back on lattes. Second of all, go open up my oven, put on some gloves, turn that lefty-loosey,
righty-tighty.
Thank you, lamp. Disable that oven light because over the course of the next 5 years, you could indeed save 13 cents. That's 13 cents you could put right in your pocket. You otherwise wouldn't have had it. Save the money, Ramit. If you think I'm kidding, in my book, I cite an actual article. This is a real published article by some person who wrote in a national publication something like the $50,000 cup of coffee. And he said, if you don't buy that one $3 coffee or that one $7 salad and you extrapolate it over 18,000 years, indeed, you could have $70,000. It's the $70,000 salad. I'm like, you actually got paid to write that? Are you kidding me? We're not going to talk about that tonight, okay? We're going to talk about how to save money right now. We're going to go not one level up. We're going to go about 10 levels up from the minutia that consumes most of America. And we're going to talk about structure. How much do you need to save? How do you save it? The psychology of saving it. And even, not just saving, actually spending. We're going to talk about the psychology of spending your emergency fund. So that's what I want to talk about tonight. Why does this get me so mad? Well, a lot of things get me mad. That's probably for another discussion. But I like to talk. I think that saving is an important part of your personal finance infrastructure. Chapter 4, conscious spending plan, means you know how much you're saving, you know how much you're investing, and you also know how much you're spending. And I think that, especially in times like today, a lot of us are wondering, like, am I okay with the amount I have saved? Or I don't feel safe, so I need to figure out a way to save more money right now. And I want to talk about all of those things. I am going to be taking questions. I will say that I get some of the worst questions on the internet from my readers. I don't know what the issue is, but you guys are horrible at asking questions. So today I posted something on my IG stories. I was like, hey, ask any questions. I got one question for today. It's actually a pretty decent question, but that was one. I think people either don't want to click swipe up and fill something out, that's fine, or they figure I'll wait until I come tonight and then do those one-word questions in the chat room. Either way, we're going to see what happens tonight with these disastrous questions. So if you have them, type them in the question box. Meanwhile, I want to talk about three things. I'll just answer your question. How much do you need to save? You need to have a 1-year emergency fund. Okay, that is what I am recommending you target. Now, I didn't used to recommend that for everyone. That was my personal rule. You can go look at my Twitter account or Google for Ramit's 10 money rules. I have, for a long time, I've said I always want to have 1 year of cash just sitting there. But I'm a bit conservative, right? I want to have it just in case. Generally, what is recommended is 3 to 6 months. And I've said, if you really want to be conservative, do a year. I'm now recommending that for everyone. So I'm going to talk to you today about why you need it, how to build it, and the psychology of building and spending that emergency fund. All right, so let's do it. So first off, let me show you an example. Let's say that right now, today, you have a job. How many people here have a job and you see what's going on with unemployment numbers, but for now you feel safe? How many people here have that situation? All right, let's say that you've also got some money in savings, but you don't know how many months it is. It might just be $500 or $5,000 or even $25,000, but it's just sitting around in a checking or savings account. You don't quite know how many months of expenses that is. How many people here are in that situation? A lot of people, okay? Now let's say 3 months go by and unemployment continues to rise. More people are laid off. More businesses close, more industries close, some for the foreseeable future. And let's just assume, for the worst case, that you also are laid off. Nothing personal. Remember, I've been laid off myself. But the industry contracts and you are laid off. What do you do? What most people do is they wait until that minute and then they panic. They don't know how unemployment works. They don't know how much they had in savings, but they know that they should have done it a long time ago. I'm seeing this on Twitter and Instagram all day long right now. I really wish I'd read that book 10 years ago. Okay? One of the key differences between the rich and everybody else is that people who are living rich lives plan before they need to. In general, you do not want your back to be up against the wall. It's a bad place to, look at this. I don't like this. I don't want to be up against the wall. I want to have room to breathe, to maneuver, to think ahead. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I want you to remember one critical factor in times like this. If you are laid off, it's not just you looking for a job. It's millions of other people. So it is at that very moment when things go wrong where pre-planning becomes even more powerful. Again, remember, if and when you get laid off, God forbid, it's not just you who's looking for a job, it's millions of other people. So you really want to have that room to make good decisions and frankly, just to have a roof over your head at a critical time like that. Okay? How many people here resonate with what I'm talking about? You might have some in savings. You might have a secure job right now, or maybe some of you may have recently been laid off. But knowing that it's not just you looking for a job, it is millions of other people. And so as much as possible, we want to plan ahead. All right, so I said 1 year of emergency fund. What does that mean? How do you actually calculate it? What I found is that much of the expert advice out there gives you these sort of generic phrases, but I want to take it down a level and connect it with you so you see exactly how much that means for you. Now, does anybody here have a sense of how much 1 year of emergency expenses would equal for you? Type that in the chat room if you do, or type it in the comments. Let me give you an example of how you can calculate that while we are seeing those numbers come in. And Cass, I'll ask you for some of those numbers in just a minute. So let's assume, easy math, that I spend $1,300 a month on everything. Rent, car, whatever. Again, just easy math. All right, so I get laid off. Or I'm planning ahead. The first thing I do is I say, you know what? In a time like this, I'm going to cut some of my discretionary expenses. I don't need this. I don't need to go out to dinner that much. So right there, I cut $300 off the top. Not going to do it. Not going to take that trip I was planning, etc. $300 off. Now I know that I need $1,000 a month. Bare minimum to live, to keep the lights on, to be eating, etc. So what does that mean? How much do I need to save for 12 months? 1,000 times 12, $12,000. So in that very simple example, do you see what I did? First off, I calculated the basic number I need just to live. Then I said, you know what, do I really need to take that trip, to go out to dinner? No, I chopped off some percentage of that. I would say target 10 to 20%. In my case, I did 30%. Now I've got a number, multiply that by 12. That is the 1 year emergency fund amount that I need to be targeting. Now, in just a second, I will talk to you about how to do that, but let's see what some of those numbers are, Cass. What have people said? How much is their 1 year emergency fund equal to?
We have 60K,
okay,
40K, in the 20s, 25, 72, some 50s. Yeah, lots of 50s actually, and then some 35Ks.
Okay, so good numbers. A couple of things that stand out to me. First of all, notice how there's no six-figure people. So why do you think that is? They don't speak up at times like this, right? This is why in a couple of days I'm doing a special session for high earners where we can talk about things that are normally not talked about. High earners do not speak up in chat rooms like this and on Reddit because everybody hates them, okay? I don't think we should hate them. I think we should have a space where we can safely talk about those issues. But in general, those are different issues. The second thing I noticed that a lot of people hovering around the 50K range. What I suspect is that most of those people make 50K. And so just as a rule of thumb, they're just going, well, I make 50K. I think I pretty much spend what I make. So 50K, don't do that. You guys you're being intellectually lazy. If you make 50K, do you contribute to your 401k? If you read my book, you do. If you haven't read my book, get off this Instagram account and go get my book right now and start reading it. So you contribute to your IRA, your 401k. You have some expense for your children, sending them to daycare. You have this, you have that. It's not really 50K that you need to fully keep the lights on. I'm asking for your minimum expenses, minimum. If you just get lazy and say, I make 50K, so my 50K is no, that's lazy, and that's gonna mislead you. It's also gonna make it harder because you're gonna be trying to save 50K when in reality you might only need to be saving, let's say 40K. That's a big difference. So I want you guys to take the time and go through the process of calculating your minimum expenses, then multiplying by 12. Okay, now let me talk about what people's first reaction is. What is your first reaction when I say 1 year of emergency expenses? I know. Most people I'm not gonna do that. There's no way I can save that much money. That would take too long. That will take me years. I'm not gonna bother at all. See, that is the normal thing that we do when confronted with a big challenge, especially one that does not feel like it's within our control. All right? Think of anything. I need to make this much money. I need to save this much money. I need to run 10 miles. Impossible. But of course, how do you run 10 miles? You run it by putting on your shoes and taking one step and another and training and doing it over a long period of time. Nobody's expecting you to save this much by tomorrow. Oftentimes, it takes years to save up a full-scale emergency fund. In this case, we're going to try to compress that. We're also going to say, hey, look, if you can't save a year, but instead you can save 7 months, that's better than nothing. So we're not going to target perfect. We're going to target the 85% solution from my book, and we're going to get on with our lives. Okay? That is the psychology of accepting that you need to build an emergency fund. All right, so how do you do it? Well, first of all, we talked about cutting those expenses that you don't need to do, that you may have been thinking about spending later in the year, etc. Just to give you a sense of how I'm thinking about money, I have basically written off the rest of the year in terms of going anywhere. So we're not taking our trip at the end of the year. We have some weddings. Either they've already been canceled or I expect they will be canceled. I am anticipating that nothing will basically be open until the end of the year. Now again, what do I know? But I'm planning conservatively, so that is how I'm thinking about my expenses. It's crazy, but I hear people that are still planning for a trip in July. That's up to you if you want to still plan it, but under the auspices of a savings goal, much less the health issue going on in this global pandemic, you might want to just say, not going to do that. All right? There are some other ways that you can save money. First off, if you are unemployed, please avail yourself of unemployment. There are lots of options right now, lots. A lot of people don't know about this. Please go online, search for unemployment. There are a lot of resources out there for you. Business owners as well. You should get educated, speak to your accountant. As I've said, I want to remind you that you should call up your credit card company, your student loan company, even your landlord, and you could say, look, I'm being negatively affected by COVID-19. I need to discuss what options you're making available for people like me. You need to save. Some companies are waiving fees. Some are extending payment plans over long periods of time. They're doing grace periods. There's lots of things you can do. Please take advantage of them. And finally, just by paying attention to this, you're going to start to see changes. It's like anything. If you start tracking your money, if you start tracking your eating, if you start tracking your steps, you're going to see changes just by virtue of looking at it. There's a principle, some scientific principle that's slipping my mind right now, but basically just by the action of observing something, you are going to change it. And that's a good thing. If you sit down tonight, you calculate your savings, your 1 year emergency amount, you start thinking, what can I cut? You're going to change it. You're going to start building that up. Let's finally not forget one thing. Of course, you can earn more and you can take that money and put it right into your emergency fund. All right, and that's a lot of what I talk about in my programs, etc. Okay, let's go now to the psychology of using your emergency fund, and then we're going to take any questions that we've got. So if you've got questions, type them in the question box. I am seeing a lot of people who have money saved up, but they are terrified to use it. And this is the opposite of people who have a spending problem. You know, there's a lot of people who spend 105% of what they make every year or every month. The other side are these hyper frugalistas whose entire life is logging into their personal capital account and looking at, oh my God, I had a 29% savings rate last month, but my average is 33.3%. I'm really slipping. What's wrong? I gotta get back on track because otherwise the fire community is not gonna respect me enough. I need to get to 40%. Get a life, okay? Please do not end up on your deathbed feeling morally superior to other people because you have a 38% savings rate. I have heard people still going to work even though they have a huge emergency fund account. Why? They don't connect the two. They mentally do not connect the two. You ask them, why are you still going to work and exposing yourself and potentially exposing other people? Oh, well, what do you mean? Like, that's my job. And then you say, like, don't you have a savings account you've like been saving for like 10 years? And they go like this. They don't make the connection. It's called an emergency fund for emergencies. Cass, do you think maybe a global pandemic that has stopped virtually 100% of business across the world would be classified as an emergency?
Yes.
Wow, thank you. Guys, get real. This is an emergency. If you've got the money, it's time to use it. Okay? Use it to live. Use it to help other people. Use it. It's there for a reason if you need it. Remember, you can always refill it later. But the craziest thing is that you have people, and this is a small amount, but it's really important, who have done the right thing in saving, but they never built the muscle of spending it. It's an emergency fund. If you need it, spend it. So that's the basic framework for how much to save right now. Now, before I get a million questions about, Ramit, I can't, 1 year is going to take me 3 years to save, etc., I want you to remember this. That is my recommendation. If you take a look at your numbers and you say, you know what, that's impossible, but I think I can do 8 months over the course of the next 6 months, great. Round of applause. Pat yourself on the back. That's great. What I want you to do is take action. I don't want you to hear this number and get demoralized because you can't do it overnight. Part of money is its patience. In fact, one of the biggest parts of earning a lot of money is being patient. In this case, you focus on what you can control. Cut your expenses. Earn more. Optimize your spending on all your bills. Call them up. Negotiate them. But take control. That is what I'm really urging. All right, so in just a second, we're going to take questions from the question box. But first, I want to answer Camille from Minneapolis, the best and only question that came in tonight. And she, Camille, what a great question. Would you recommend halting or minimizing your 401k contributions, your student loan payments, your HSA contributions until we build up at least 1 year of emergency fund? Yes. Yes, I would. Crazy to hear me say this, but yes, I would. The HSA contributions you might make, for example. HSA is a great tax advantaged account. It's amazing. I talk about it in chapter 3 or 7 of my book. The amount you could make this year, if you compound that over the next 20 years, it's some amount. You know, I don't know how much you're contributing. Maybe that would be worth $10,000 over the course of the next 20 years. Okay, that's a lot of money. But guess what? Today, in an employment scenario like this, I would rather have a couple $1,000 now sitting in that savings account relative to $10,000 later. Remember what I'm saying. You have to live to fight another day. That's a really important principle right now. You do not want to run out of money. Above all, you do not want to run out of money. You do not want to put yourself at risk, or if you have family, your family or loved ones at risk. So, rule number 1 is live to fight another day. And that means if you have to take a little bit of a haircut on your $10,000 over the course of the next 30 years, big deal. It's not a big deal. You can take the $2,000 that's in your pocket and you can invest a little bit more aggressively next year or the year after whenever things recover, okay? But yes, I certainly would stop contributing to those things until I had a 1-year emergency fund. And then, once you have that, certainly go back, continue investing. That's what I'm doing, right? I'm continuing to invest. So if you've got that 1-year emergency fund, you have earned the right to keep investing your money, and you will benefit drastically from that opportunity over the long term because you did the work ahead of time. For those of you who don't have that, that's okay, but focus on that first.
Okay, before we get into questions, we just got a comment that I want to say out loud because I think it's awesome. So I am the Christina just said, I'm a junior in high school and will receive your book sometime this week. I can't wait to start reading. Wow.
Awesome. Junior in high school.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I am so, oh my God. Can I just say this? First of all, is her name Christina?
Her username is I am the Christina. So yes,
I am the Christina. So. Awesome to meet you. Congratulations on taking action. And I just want to say this. For someone your age, this is the crazy thing. Young people with a long time horizon should be happy that stock prices are down. For young people, it is the single best thing they can hope for over the course of the long term because you are starting your investment career, even if it's $50 a month, even $50 a quarter, you are building that habit of investing right now. And I think it is amazing. I remember starting to invest in my teen years. I made a lot of mistakes. I wish there was a book like this out. I would buy individual stocks. Most of them went bankrupt. But I learned how to log in. I learned how to set things up automatically. And it's kind of hard and intimidating the first few times you do it. But once you get it, the habit, you're like, oh, this is not too hard. When I make some money, I just put it in there. You will benefit in an insane amount. So I'm the Christina. I'm proud. I'm happy. I'm thrilled to hear that comment.
Okay. Good job. Oh, she said that was her middle name. Okay, so first question. If we have the capacity, should we create an EF for our parents?
Ooh. That's part of a larger question, I think. So I do believe that in times like this, that you should take care of your friends, your loved ones. That was the first rule that I posted on my last video, Instagram video, etc. And that was the first thing that I did. When this happened, the first thing I said was like, all right, I got to check in with my family, loved ones, make sure we're okay. So if you have the capital, then I believe this is absolutely a time to deploy it. Yes. How you do that is a very sensitive topic. For example, if you just like send a check for $10,000 to your parents, that might not be received too well. I don't know your parents. Some parents are proud. Some would be defensive. Some would be like, oh, it's about time you sent me that $10,000 check. You need to make sure you understand, and I would strongly suggest you bring up the topic. One way you might do that is, I had a question from somebody the other day. Should I have an uncle or something, and I suspect that, he's not doing well. What should I do? I think one option you have is to send them a small gift, just something that lets them know you're thinking of them. Now that opens up the opportunity for you to give them a call or for them to call and thank you. And then you say, how are things going? How are you feeling? Is there anything I can do to help? And that small gift, again, it's a modest gift. It's just a token to say, I'm thinking of you, allows you to have the conversation and judge whether they might be open to needing some help. I might suggest something like that depending on where your parents are on that spectrum. But yeah, I absolutely think if you can help your loved ones, this is the time to do it.
Okay. Oh, this is interesting. How do you take responsibility if you know your parents would help you in an emergency?
So can you read it one more time?
Yeah. How do you take responsibility if you know your parents would help you in an emergency?
How do you take... Okay, so let's just admit what's going on here. There's some people who have help, whether it be their parents would backstop them if they needed it, or their parents pay their rent. We should admit this. I remember when I moved into New York, my parents came with me and they were moving me up. And there were like a lot of young, like 20-something kids in the elevator that day for some reason. And my mom was like, oh wow, a lot of young people here. I was like, Mom, those kids don't pay for their apartments. Their parents pay. And my parents are from the West Coast, and we didn't grow up with parents paying for kids' apartments. My mom was like, what? How do they have that much money? I'm like, welcome to New York. So it happens. My encouragement for everyone living your rich life is, first, understand how to make your own rich life. Okay, that's important. Second, acknowledge the advantages you have. And sometimes you might have to use them. Okay, but that's not the first place I go. For example, if you came to me and you said, Ramit, I tried to do it all on my own. I'm about to be out on the street. My parents have happily offered to help me with rent, but like you told me not to take anybody's help. That would be a horrible interpretation of what I'm saying. Sometimes in your life, somebody's going to get you an interview. You should take it. Sometimes in life, someone's going to teach you something that behind closed doors that they wouldn't have taught you in public. You should take that. But you probably should not depend or become entitled on it. So I do think that you should find your own way. You should follow my advice about building an emergency fund. Honestly, you want to show people around you that you are taking steps to control your future. But if in the rare case you truly need help, raise your hand, ask for it.
Okay. All right. Should we take out the 100K with no penalty out of the 401k right now?
I would not do that unless it's a dire case. So I would say 50% of the time I hear from people who took a loan against their 401k or pretty much took a loan, they never repay it. People who take loans out of their 401ks in general have poor behavioral control over their money. It's just like people in credit card debt. In general, people in credit card debt are there for a reason. Okay? I'm not talking about healthcare expenses. I'm talking about credit card debt. So don't do that, because even though right now they've done some amazing things to be able to waive some of the fees and penalties that used to be there, unless you absolutely need to, I would not recommend it. Why? A couple of reasons. Number one, it's a bad sign overall if you go in rating your 401k. It shows that you haven't done the other things. And for most people, the other things can actually sustain you. Second, don't forget, I talked about all these things you can do. Call up your credit card landlord. Unemployment, if you're unemployed, get it. Take advantage of it, please. It's there for you. If you have to raid your 401k, then something has really gone wrong. Now, I'm not saying don't ever do it, but it's one of the sources of last resort. So I would not recommend it. I would try as much as possible not to do it. Oh, one last thing. By taking it there, it will maybe tide you over in the short term, but it will cost you dearly in the future. That money there will be highly lucrative to you in the long term if you can live to fight another day.
How do you determine how much you can spend on rent if you have a variable income?
Ooh, that's a good question. So there are some guidelines for how much you can afford, you should afford to spend in rent. In general, 28% is a good recommended number. You can search 28% rent to see what I'm talking about. So there actually are some good guidelines for how much people can spend on a rent or a mortgage, basically housing, a car, all debt combined, including student loan, credit card, etc. Most people don't know about these, and they're in my book as well. But there are some generally accepted guidelines. Now, if you have a variable income, that adds an extra layer of complexity. The way that you do it, as I cover in some chapter, is you want to build a buffer. So if your minimum expenses are $1,000 a month, you want to target 6 to 12 months of emergency fund. So in this case, if you have a $5,000 month, you take $1,000 away, pay off your stuff, put $4,000 in your emergency fund, and then next month, if you make $0, you can draw from there. In general, you want to build up a buffer and effectively simulate a standard 9-to-5 income. Now, what does that mean specifically for you? It really depends on the numbers we're talking about. If your variable income is, $1,000 to $2,000 a month, that's going to be a pretty low rent. If it's, I know some freelancers who some months make $30,000 and then they make zero for 2 months. That's going to be a totally different rent. In general, I would err on the side of being conservative. I would look up that 28% rule. I would look at how much you've made over the last year, just as a benchmark, and then I would take a steep haircut for the next 12 months, again, depending on your industry. So it's a bit complicated for you, but I would assume that you've already been spending it so you can see if you're making too much or if you're spending too much or not. And in worst case, you may need to find a second job. Also, you may need to move to a cheaper place. All right. So tonight, what did we talk about? We talked about more than just cutting back on $3 expenses. We talked about the structure. How much do you need to save? I'm recommending 1 year of emergency fund. We went deeper. We talked about the psychology of what does it mean to build that. A lot of people go, that's overwhelming. I can't do that. Forget it. And they give up. Do not do that. Even if you get 70% of the way there, it's better than zero. We talked about how to build it. Lots of options you have to save money right now. Lots. So please don't feel overwhelmed or like it's unachievable. You can achieve it. Absolutely. It just might take some time. And finally, we talked about the psychology of spending it. If you have an emergency fund, you have earned the right to deploy it. Spend it so you don't have to go to work. Spend it on your loved ones and even continue investing if you have additional money. So that is what we talked about tonight. Please follow me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, tag a friend who needs to see this. We really talked about some stuff that's not frequently discussed in one easy video. So I'd love to share this and I'd love your help to do that. Thanks, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
If you want another amazing video highlighting excellence in the Indian community, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.